My name is Natalie Morrison, and I'm 31 years old. The day I learned my fiancé was planning to marry me while still wearing his ex-girlfriend's name like a medal, I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I did something worse. I stayed calm. I was sitting at our kitchen table with a stack of wedding invoices spread out like a losing hand. Venue, catering, flowers. The kind of deposits that make your stomach tighten when you realize how easy it is to spend thousands on a single day. My coffee had gone lukewarm. My laptop was open to our wedding website, tabs still up from the country club's payment portal. Everything about my life that month was timelines and due dates and little digital confirmations. Then Cameron walked in. He had that look on his face, soft mouth, careful eyes, like he'd rehearsed the exact angle of his concern in the mirror. I'd come to recognize it as his professional announcement face. "Babe," he said, voice low and reasonable, like he was about to tell me we needed a new Wi-Fi router. "I need to talk to you about my name after we get married." For a split second, I actually felt relieved. I thought, okay, he's going to tell me he wants to keep his last name. Fine. Modern. Practical. I didn't need ownership. I needed partnership. "Sure," I said, glancing back down at the invoices. "What's up?" "I'm going to hyphenate," he said. "Okay," I shrugged. "Lots of people do that." He nodded quickly, like he appreciated how easy I was making this. "Not with your name," he added. I paused. The space between my heartbeat and the next felt longer than it should have. "What do you mean?" I asked, still calm, still thinking there was a normal explanation hiding behind the words. "With Avery's," Cameron said. I set my coffee down carefully because suddenly my hands felt too steady to trust. "Avery," I repeated, like the name had to be said twice before it could become real. "Your ex-girlfriend." He exhaled, already prepared for this part. "It's for professional reasons." Professional. That word is always supposed to make everything acceptable, isn't it? In his world, professional was a magic stamp, a pardon, a "don't question me" badge. "All my published research papers," he continued, "they're under Cameron Hampton Sinclair. Sinclair. Avery Sinclair. They dated for 4 years. They'd broken up 3 years ago. Cameron and I had been together for 2.5 years, engaged for 6 months. Our wedding was in 2 months. And somehow I was only hearing now that he'd been building his career wearing another woman's last name. "You never married her," I said slowly. He shifted his weight. "No, but when we were together, I started using it professionally. Networking. It helped with recognition. The Sinclair name carries weight in academic circles." So he'd been cosplaying as her husband professionally the entire time we'd been together. I stared at him. Not the way you look at someone you love, but the way you look at a detail in a contract that suddenly changes everything. "So after we get married," I said, "you'll be Cameron Hampton Sinclair Morrison?" His face tightened, like he'd tasted something unpleasant. "No, that's too long. I'll just stay Cameron Hampton Sinclair." My throat did something strange, like it wanted to laugh and choke at the same time. "So you won't take my name at all," I said, "but you'll keep hers." He frowned, immediately irritated that I'd made it emotional. "Natalie, you're making this into something it's not. It's purely practical." "Practical." Right. Because nothing says practical like dragging your ex's identity into your marriage like an extra suitcase you refuse to unpack. I looked at him for a long beat, long enough that he started to second-guess his confidence. Then I nodded. "Yeah," I said, "makes sense." His shoulders dropped in visible relief. "Really?" he breathed. "Oh my God, thank you. I thought you'd freak out." "Nope," I said lightly, already turning my laptop toward me. "All good." He smiled like he'd just passed a test. He had no idea he'd failed one. I clicked into our wedding website, our shiny little digital promise with the engagement photos and the countdown timer and the Our Story section his mother had shared with everyone she'd ever met. The header read, "Cameron and Natalie's wedding." I left that part alone, because I wanted it to look normal at first glance. Then I went to the RSVP section, and under my name I added 2 words, "Attendance TBD." Still deciding if I'll show up. I added it the way someone updates a calendar event when they're not sure if the meeting is worth their time. Cameron's smile faltered. "What are you doing?" "Making my own professional announcement," I said, still calm, still reasonable. His phone started ringing immediately. He glanced down at the screen, confusion deepening. "What?" he answered. "Hello?" I could hear the voice even from across the table, sharp and loud through the speaker. "What the hell is this about you not showing up to your own wedding?" It was Phoebe, his closest friend and the loudest one in his wedding party. Cameron's eyes flicked to me, panicked. He forced a laugh. "It's nothing. She's just being petty." I raised my voice just enough for Phoebe to hear me clearly. Ask him about keeping Avery's name. Silence. Pure, stunned silence. Then Phoebe's voice came back, lower now, like the room around her had leaned in. Avery, your ex Avery, she said. Cameron, are you insane? Cameron's face went pale. I didn't gloat. I didn't smirk. I just sat there, watching the first crack spread through the glass. Because in that moment, I realized something important. Cameron hadn't told them. He'd told me, because he thought I'd swallow it. But he hadn't told them, because he knew they'd see it for what it was. His phone kept buzzing with new calls stacking up like consequences. Phoebe, Jade, Ramona. And then, almost like the universe had a sense of timing, his sister Genevieve texted, "What did you do? Mom's freaking out." Cameron stared at the screen like it might offer him an escape route. Then he looked at me, voice tight, trying to pull authority out of thin air. "Fix it," he said. And I smiled. Small, polite, the kind of smile you give a coworker who just asked you to cover their shift for the 5th time. "I will," I promised. "After you fix your name problem." His jaw clenched. "It's not a problem." I tipped my head, like I was considering the logic. "Then neither is mine," I said, tapping the screen once more so the words sat there in bright, undeniable clarity. Still deciding if I'll show up. Outside, traffic hissed on wet pavement. The apartment lights buzzed softly overhead. Everything was normal. Except the man across from me had just proven he wanted to marry me, while still belonging, professionally, publicly, permanently, to someone else. And I had just proven I wasn't going to quietly accept being second place in my own marriage. The phone kept ringing. And this was only the beginning. 4 days later, the first knock came when Cameron wasn't home. Not a polite knock either. Not a neighbor asking if we'd received their package. This was a statement knock, a sharp, rhythmic pounding that said, "We're here to correct you." I was in leggings and an old college sweatshirt, hair in a messy bun, trying to pretend I still had a normal life. My laptop was open. Wedding spreadsheets were still open too because my brain hadn't yet decided whether to grieve or strategize, so it was doing both. When I opened the door, I found them arranged like a staged photo. Phoebe in front, chin lifted, eyes narrowed, already angry on Cameron's behalf. Jade beside her, concerned, sympathetic, ready to explain why my feelings were inconvenient. Ramona leaning against the hall wall, arms crossed, expression like she'd come to watch a fire. And Genevieve, Cameron's sister, standing slightly behind them with a face that screamed, "I told him this would happen." Phoebe stepped forward like she owned the hallway. "Natalie," she said, slow and firm, like she was addressing a child who'd scribbled on a white wall, "you need to stop this." I blinked once. "Hi to you too." "We saw the wedding website," Jade added quickly, softer, like she was the one offering me a warm blanket while Phoebe held the knife. "Everyone saw it. Cameron's mom is getting calls from relatives in Ohio. His aunt is crying." Ramona snorted. "His aunt cries if Starbucks spells her name wrong." Genevieve shot her a warning look, then faced me. "This isn't funny, Nat. Mom thinks you're trying to humiliate him." I leaned against the doorframe, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. "Okay," I said. "Come in, since we're having a meeting." Phoebe marched inside first, like she was entering a courtroom. The rest followed, and suddenly my living room felt smaller, like oxygen had been replaced with other people's opinions. Phoebe didn't even sit. "Natalie, you're being childish," she announced. "You're embarrassing Cameron." I tilted my head. He embarrassed himself when he told me he plans to keep his ex-girlfriend's name. Jade stepped in, hands lifted in that calming gesture people use when they want you to be quiet but seem kind about it. "You don't understand academia," she said. "Publishing credentials are everything. Name continuity matters. It's not romantic. It's professional." "Cool," I said. "Then he can be professional single." Phoebe's eyes flashed. "That's not fair." "No," I corrected. "It's consistent." Genevieve finally sat on the edge of my couch like she was exhausted already. "He never married Avery, Natalie. It's not even his legal name. He just used it professionally." I looked at her. "So he's been pretending to be connected to his ex's family while dating me." Ramona let out a low whistle. "When you say it like that, it sounds real bad." Phoebe swung her head toward Ramona like she'd betrayed the group. "This isn't helping." Ramona shrugged. "I'm just allergic to delusion." Jade tried a new angle. Sympathy, warmth, the soft push. "He loves you," she said. "The name doesn't mean anything." I stared at her like she'd told me gravity was optional. "If it doesn't mean anything," I said, "he can change it." Phoebe exhaled, frustrated. "Natalie, you're going to ruin your own wedding over something technical." "I'm not ruining anything," I said. "I'm just being honest about my uncertainty." Phoebe's nostrils flared. You're doing it publicly. Because he made his choice publicly, I said. He wants to walk into our marriage wearing another woman's name like a badge, so I'm letting guests know I haven't decided if I'm showing up to applaud that. Genevieve rubbed her forehead. You're making this sound like cheating. It feels like cheating, I said quietly. And that was the moment the room changed. Because the truth is, people can argue facts all day, but when you say how it feels, they have to either listen or admit they don't care. Phoebe's voice softened, just slightly, just enough to sound reasonable while still demanding obedience. He told us it was about his tenure application, she said. He said changing it now could cost him years. I laughed once. Not a joyful laugh, not even a mean one. The kind of laugh that slips out when your reality becomes so ridiculous your body has to release it somehow. He submitted his tenure application, I repeated slowly, under his ex-girlfriend's name, without telling me, while planning a wedding with me. Jade pressed her lips together. He wanted it to be a surprise. What a gift, I said. Tenure papers wrapped in deception. Ramona leaned forward. Okay, but real question. Why is he still using it at all if they broke up 3 years ago? Phoebe snapped, because that name opens doors. I looked at her, and my voice went calm again. Dangerously calm. So you admit it? Phoebe blinked. What? That he's keeping it for access, I said. Not identity, not history, access. The room went quiet. Genevieve's face tightened, like she'd swallowed something sour. Jade glanced down at her hands. Even Phoebe hesitated. Because once you say it out loud, it sounds less like professional continuity and more like using people. Ramona broke the tension with a dry laugh. Damn, Natalie's not wrong. Phoebe whirled on her. Are you on her side? I'm on the side of not marrying someone who drags their ex into the ceremony like a +1, Ramona said. It's giving weird. Phoebe's cheeks flushed. You're all missing the point. Natalie is humiliating him. I stepped closer, slow and controlled, like I was approaching an animal that might bite. No, I said. He humiliated me by telling me I'm supposed to be okay being Mrs. Someone else's name. Genevieve stood up. Natalie, please, just take the TBD off the website. Handle this privately. I met her eyes. Tell your brother to take Avery's name off his future. That was when Phoebe's tone sharpened again, the mask slipping. If you keep doing this, she said, you're going to force him to choose between his career and you. I smiled faintly. Good, I said, because he already chose. I'm just making it visible. The front door clicked behind them. Cameron walked in mid-sentence. His gaze snapped to the 4 women in my living room, then to me. What is this? He demanded. Phoebe jumped in immediately, like a defense attorney. We came to talk sense into her, she said, gesturing at me like I was a malfunctioning appliance, because she's acting like a child. Cameron's face darkened. Natalie, seriously? You're dragging everyone into our business? I didn't even glance at Phoebe. I kept my eyes on him. They dragged themselves, I said, because you cried to them. His mouth opened, then closed. That tiny pause, the hesitation, told me everything. He had cried to them. He'd painted himself as the victim. He'd probably said I was overreacting, emotional, insecure. Cameron turned to them. Can you guys give us a minute? Phoebe hesitated, clearly wanting to stay for the fight, but Genevieve tugged her arm. Jade grabbed her purse. Ramona gave me a look, half amusement, half respect, before strolling out like she'd just finished watching a great episode. The door shut, and suddenly it was just us. Cameron stood in the entryway, shoulders tense, eyes sharp. You're making me look insane, he said. I folded my arms. You are insane. He stepped closer. It's just a name, a professional name. Then why won't you change it? I asked. He threw his hands up. Because my publications, my entire career, are built on pretending to be connected to your ex, I said. His jaw clenched. You're twisting it. I'm naming it, I said. You just don't like the name. His eyes narrowed. You're being unreasonable. I leaned forward slightly, voice quiet. No, I said. I'm being precise. His voice rose. You don't get it. You don't understand the system. I nodded once. Maybe I don't. Then I walked to the kitchen table, tapped my laptop, and turned it so he could see the RSVP line again. Natalie Morrison. Attendance TBD. You want the system? I asked. Here's mine. He stared at it like it was a threat, because it was. He looked up at me, breathing hard. If you love me, you'll stop this. My chest tightened, not because I was tempted, but because love was always the weapon. Love as leverage. Love as a leash. If you love me, I said, you'll stop wearing her name. The silence after that was loud. Cameron's face shifted. Anger, frustration, and underneath it all, fear. Not fear of losing me. Fear of losing whatever that name gave him. He grabbed his keys from the counter like he couldn't stay in the same air with my question. I'm not doing this right now, he said. Of course not, I replied, because doing it would mean choosing. He froze at the door, shoulders rigid. Then he said, without turning around, I'm going to Genevieve's. And he left. The moment the door shut, my apartment felt too quiet. I stood there in the kitchen, staring at the wedding invoices, numbers that suddenly felt like a joke. Because what was I paying for? A dress, a venue, a cake. A ceremony where I'd be smiling beside a man who couldn't let go of the name that made him feel important. My phone buzzed. A new message. From a number I didn't recognize. Hi, Natalie, it's Avery. My throat went cold. Because when the ex texts you directly, it means the story just moved into a deeper, darker chapter. And I had a feeling I was about to learn that Cameron's professional reasons were only the surface. I stared at the message for a full 30 seconds before opening it. Not because I didn't want to know what it said, but because once you hear the truth from the person at the center of it, you can't unhear it. Hi, Natalie, it's Avery. That was it. No apology, no explanation, just her name. Like it still carried weight even in my phone. I finally typed back. I figured. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. I'm sorry to reach out like this. I didn't know how else to handle it. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same place Cameron had calmly announced he'd be bringing his past into our marriage, like it was a resume item. Handle what? I wrote. The dots came back almost immediately this time. The name. There it was. Not him, not the engagement, not the wedding. The name. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Go on, I typed. A pause, longer this time. Then the truth started leaking through the screen, line by careful line. Cameron has been using Sinclair professionally since we were together, she wrote. I knew he kept publishing under it after we broke up. I assumed he'd stop once things got serious with someone else. I felt something cold settle in my chest. He didn't, I replied. I know, she wrote. I heard about the wedding website. People talk. Of course they do. Academic circles, social circles, wedding circles. Everyone talks. Just not to the person most affected until it's almost too late. Why didn't you say anything, I asked. There it was, the question I'd been circling since the beginning. Her reply took longer. When it came, it was careful. Because I was asked not to. My fingers stilled over the keyboard. By who? Another pause. Then, by Cameron. And by my father. I closed my eyes. Of course. Avery Sinclair's father. Department dean, gatekeeper. The man whose last name apparently opened doors Cameron didn't know how to open himself. They said it was better if I didn't make waves, she continued, that Cameron's work was valuable. That continuity mattered, that it would all resolve itself. Like problems just evaporate if you don't name them. Did you know he planned to keep your name after marriage? I asked. The reply came slower, heavier. No, she wrote. I thought he'd drop it when he married you. Honestly, it's uncomfortable for me, too. That surprised me more than I expected. Then why are you still letting it happen? I typed. Her answer was honest in a way Cameron's never had been. Because my father controls my department. Because Cameron's tenure application has his support. Because saying no would have consequences. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. So this wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't lingering love. It was infrastructure. You're protecting him, I wrote. I'm protecting the system, she replied. He just happens to benefit from it. That sentence sat between us like a confession. I thought about Cameron's PowerPoint voice, his calm explanations, his certainty that logic would override my discomfort. He wasn't arrogant. He was entitled. I didn't know you existed when he started using the name again, Avery added. And once I did, I assumed you were okay with it. I laughed quietly to myself. He told me yesterday, I wrote, 2 months before the wedding. There was a long silence after that. When she finally replied, the tone had shifted. That's not okay, she said, and I'm sorry. I believed her, which almost made it worse. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because no one reaches out like this without a reason. Her response came quickly. Because Cameron called me today. My pulse ticked faster. About what? About the wedding venue, she wrote. He asked if my family could help cover part of it. I stared at the screen, stunned. He'd already gone there. He hadn't just kept her name. He'd kept the door open. I told him no, she continued, and that he needed to deal with his own mess. Good. But it didn't erase what came next. I wanted you to hear it from me, she wrote, not from him. I took a deep breath, then typed the question I hadn't wanted to ask, but needed to. Be honest. How much of his career would exist without your name? The dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then stopped. Minutes passed. Finally, less than he thinks. That was all. No justification, no spin, just truth. Thank you, I wrote, because it was the only honest thing left to say. She replied with a single line. You deserve to know who you're marrying. When the chat went quiet, my apartment felt different. Like a room after a storm, same walls, same furniture, but the air heavier with what had been stripped bare. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Cameron. Why are you talking to Avery? So he already knew. Interesting. Why are you still using her name? I replied. 3 dots. Nothing. Then, you're crossing a line. I smiled, slow, humorless. No, I typed. I'm finally seeing it. He called immediately. I let it ring. Again. Again. Finally, I answered. What? I said. His voice came through sharp, controlled, already angry. You went behind my back. I laughed softly. That's rich. You had no right. You lost the right when you tried to marry me under another woman's name, I cut in. He exhaled hard. This is exactly why I didn't want this to get emotional. Everything you've built is emotional, I said. You just call it professional, so you don't have to feel guilty. That name opens doors, he snapped. There it is, I said quietly. Say it again. Silence. Then, lower. You don't understand what's at stake. I understand perfectly, I replied. What I don't understand is why you thought I'd be okay being collateral. He didn't answer, because there was no explanation that didn't make him look exactly like what he was. Using the past to secure the future. Using me to make it respectable. You're blowing this up, he finally said. No, I corrected. I'm stepping out of the blast radius. Another pause. Then, carefully, we can compromise. I closed my eyes. Because when someone offers compromise after they've been exposed, it's never about fairness. It's about damage control. We'll talk later, he said. We've been talking for 2.5 years, I replied. You just forgot to mention the part where your ex's name mattered more than my trust. I hung up before he could respond. I sat there alone, phone in my hand, heart steady in a way that surprised me, because the confusion was gone. The fog had lifted, and what stood in front of me now wasn't a dilemma. It was a decision. I looked back at the wedding website one more time. Attendance TBD. For the first time, it didn't feel petty. It felt accurate, because I wasn't deciding whether to show up to a wedding. I was deciding whether to show up to a lie. The next evening, Cameron came back with what he clearly thought was a solution. Not an apology. Not accountability. A solution. He didn't knock this time. He used his key like nothing had shifted, like the apartment still belonged to the version of us that didn't exist anymore. I was at the dining table again. Same spot. Different woman. My laptop was closed. The spreadsheets were gone. I'd learned everything I needed to know, and none of it required Excel. Cameron set his bag down carefully, like the room might explode if he moved too fast. Okay, he said, rubbing his hands together. I've been thinking. I didn't look up. That's new. He ignored the comment. I think we can make this work. I finally raised my eyes. That optimism, that dangerous confidence, the kind that only comes from someone who still thinks they're in control. I'll hyphenate with both names, he said. Yours and Avery's. I stared at him. Say that again, I asked calmly. Hampton Morrison Sinclair, he repeated, like he'd practiced it. Everyone wins. I laughed. Not softly, not kindly. I laughed so hard I had to put my hand on the table to steady myself. You think that's a compromise? I asked. He frowned. Yes. That's you keeping everything you want, I said, and adding my name like a souvenir. That's not fair. No, I replied. That's accurate. He ran a hand through his hair. Natalie, you're being impossible. I leaned back in my chair. I'm being consistent. With what? With reality, I said. You don't get to keep your ex's name and call it neutral just because you stapled mine to it. It's just a professional identifier, he snapped. Why are you so obsessed with Avery? I stood up slowly. I'm not, I said. You are. He scoffed. That's ridiculous. Is it? I asked. You're fighting harder for her name than you ever fought for my comfort. His jaw tightened. You're acting like this is about feelings. It is, I said, just not mine. He stared at me, breathing hard, then exhaled sharply like he'd reached the part he didn't want to say. I already submitted my tenure application, he said. The room went very still. Under Hampton Sinclair, he added. I felt something cold slide down my spine. You did what? I asked. I was going to surprise you, he said quickly. Once it was approved, I didn't want to stress you out. With your ex's name attached? I asked. He threw his hands up. It's temporary. How long? I pressed. Until tenure, he said. Then we can revisit it. Revisit it. Like trust was a setting you could toggle later. You submitted for tenure, I said slowly, without telling me, under another woman's name, while planning a wedding with me. Yes, he snapped, because my career matters. And where do I fit in? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me more than any speech ever could. I assumed you'd understand, he said. I nodded once. That's the problem. He stepped closer, voice lowering. Do you know what it would cost me to change it now? I'd have to resubmit everything. It could delay my tenure for years. And you didn't think that was worth discussing with the woman you're marrying? I didn't think you'd react like this. I laughed again, quietly this time. You didn't think, I said. You decided. He opened his mouth to argue, then stopped. Because I wasn't yelling. I wasn't crying. I was calm. And calm is terrifying when someone realizes they've already lost the moral high ground. I looked at him and asked the question that cracked something in his expression. What about our kids? He blinked. What? Our future kids, I said. What name do they get, Morrison? Or do they inherit Sinclair too? His face drained of color. I hadn't thought about that. Of course you hadn't. You thought about tenure, I said. You thought about conferences. You thought about access. I stepped closer now. But you didn't think about being a husband. He rubbed his temples. This is unfair. No, I said. This is inconvenient. That's when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and stiffened. Don't answer it, I said. He answered it anyway. Mom, he said, already tired. Hi. I listened to one side of the conversation as his shoulders slumped. Yes, I know. She's upset. No, it's not that big of a deal. I closed my eyes. He was minimizing me. Again. He handed me the phone like it was a peace offering. She wants to talk to you. I took it. Hello, I said. Natalie, darling, Daphne said warmly. Cameron tells me you're having concerns about the wedding. I'm having concerns about him keeping his ex-girlfriend's name, I replied. Well, she said gently, it's just pragmatic. I smiled. Would you have taken your ex's name if it was pragmatic? I asked. That's different. How? Well, I wasn't building a career. So you're saying your son is choosing his career over his marriage? I asked. Silence. Then she said, he can have both. I handed the phone back to Cameron. Not with me, I said. He can't. He stared at me like he couldn't believe I just said it out loud. Do you know how much money we've already spent? He asked. The venue, the catering. I'll reimburse you for half, I said. That's not the point. It is to you, I said, not to me. Guests are flying in, Natalie. They can still come, I replied. I just might not be there. You can't be serious. Ask your son if he's serious about marrying Avery's name, I said. I mean, me. That night, Cameron didn't sleep in the apartment. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of furious typing. I walked into the living room and found him at the coffee table, laptop open, eyes blazing with purpose. What are you doing? I asked. Proving a point, he said. On the screen was a PowerPoint, a literal presentation. Slide 1, name continuity and academic impact graphs. Citations, a timeline of his publications. Slide 12 was titled, Cost-Benefit Analysis of Name Change. I stared at it. Then I laughed. Hard. You made a PowerPoint, I said, to convince me to let you keep your ex's name. I'm being logical, he said sharply. You're being insane, I replied. This is my career, he shouted. And this is supposed to be our marriage, I said quietly. He slammed the laptop shut. Maybe we should postpone the wedding, he said. I met his eyes. Maybe we should cancel it. We stared at each other. Finally, he said, I'm not changing my professional name. I nodded. Then I'm not changing my RSVP status. Something in his face cracked. Because for the first time, he understood. This wasn't about persuasion anymore. It was about consequences. And neither of us could pretend otherwise. By the end of that week, Cameron decided honesty wasn't working. So he tried control. I found out the same way I'd found out about everything else. Through other people. My phone started buzzing while I was in the grocery store, standing in front of the yogurt case, trying to remember what kind of life I thought I was buying into 2 months earlier. Unknown number, then another, then Genevieve. I answered hers. What did you do? She asked, breathless. I'm buying groceries, I said. What did he do? She hesitated. Cameron sent out correction emails. I stopped walking. Correction emails for what? For the wedding website, she said carefully. He told everyone it was hacked, that the RSVP thing was a glitch. He assured them the wedding is proceeding as planned. The yogurt case hummed beside me, cold air against my legs. He'd rewritten reality. I see, I said. You didn't agree to that, did you? She asked. No, I said softly, but thank you for telling me. I hung up, abandoned my cart, and went home. When I got there, Cameron wasn't around, but his laptop was open on the counter, careless, like someone who thought they were still safe. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. I opened my own. I drafted one email, attached screenshots of our text conversations, attached his PowerPoint slides, attached the message where he said he wasn't changing his professional name. The subject line, not hacked, just honest. Then I hit send. To everyone, family, friends, wedding guests, the group chats I'd been muted in for weeks. The fallout was immediate. My phone rang within minutes. Cameron's father. I let it go to voicemail. Then his mother. Then Cameron. I answered his on the fourth call. "What the hell did you do?" he demanded. "I told the truth," I said. "You said honesty mattered." "You humiliated me," he snapped. "You humiliated yourself," I replied. "I just stopped covering for it." His voice dropped. "My father is furious." "Good," I said. He hung up. 10 minutes later, his father called again. I answered this time. "Natalie," Harrison said, voice tight with contained anger. "You've crossed a line." "I didn't know there was one," I said, "since Cameron erased it." "You're dragging private matters into public view." "Cameron made it public when he planned to marry me under his ex-girlfriend's name," I said. "It's business," Harrison said. "You're being emotional." "Marriage isn't business," I replied, "unless your son is marrying me for strategic reasons too." Silence. Then a click. He hung up. I sat there, heart steady. Because once people start hanging up on you, it means they don't have logic left. That evening, my phone buzzed with a name I didn't expect. Evelyn, Cameron's grandmother. I answered immediately. "Natalie, dear," she said, voice crisp despite her 82 years. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," I said. "Good," she replied, "because someone needed to tell you the truth." I closed my eyes. "I'm listening." "She dated Avery very intentionally," Evelyn said. "Everyone in the family knew it. Cameron told me himself, said he'd never have gotten into that PhD program without her father's recommendation." My stomach tightened. "He used her," Evelyn continued, "and now he's using you." I swallowed. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because," she said bluntly, "you seem like a decent woman who doesn't deserve to be someone's backup plan." I exhaled slowly. "I love my grandson," she added, "but he's always been calculating. He gets it from his mother." "Of course he does." "Thank you," I said. She snorted. "Don't thank me, just don't marry him." That night, I made a call of my own. To the wedding venue. The country club Cameron had insisted on. The one his family liked. The one that required both our cards on file. "I need to cancel my portion of the payment," I said calmly. There was a pause on the other end. "Ma'am," the coordinator said carefully, "without your card, the remaining balance will need to be paid in full immediately." "That's fine," I said. "Just remove mine." When Cameron called screaming 20 minutes later, I was already packing a box of his things. "The venue says you withdrew payment," he yelled. "Yes. The wedding is in 2 weeks." "What wedding?" I asked. "I haven't decided if I'm showing up, remember? They want $15,000 up front or they'll cancel." I smiled. "Better call Avery," I said. "I hear the Sinclair name opens doors." He hung up on me. An hour later, my phone rang again. "Unknown number," I answered. "Hey, Natalie," a man said, awkward but polite. "This is Cameron." I blinked. "You're Cameron." "No," he corrected quickly. "Sinclair, Avery's father." My pulse spiked. "I heard about the venue situation," he said. "Cameron asked if our family could help." "And?" I asked. "And I told him absolutely not," he said. "This isn't appropriate." I smiled to myself. "Thank you," I said. He hesitated. "I also wanted you to know this name situation is complicated, but it shouldn't involve you." "Agreed," I said. After we hung up, I sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. The wedding was unraveling. The family was splitting. The truth was crawling into the light, whether Cameron liked it or not. And for the first time since all of this began, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Because once the lie collapses, you don't have to hold it up anymore. The next morning, Cameron crossed a line so absurd I almost admired the confidence it took to attempt it. Almost. I found out through Landon, my friend from college who now worked in a different department at Cameron's university. We weren't close, but academia is a small world, and gossip travels faster than peer review. He texted me one sentence. "You're not going to believe this, but Cameron just asked a lawyer if he can sue you." I stared at my phone, waiting for the punchline. Then another message came in. "For breach of promise." I laughed out loud. A real laugh, the kind that makes people in cafes look up. "Please tell me you're kidding," I typed. "Wish I were," Landon replied. "The lawyer's a friend of a friend. Gave me a heads up because he thought it was insane." Insane was generous. According to Landon, Cameron had walked into a consultation and asked, very seriously, whether he could sue his fiancée for not marrying him, while openly planning to keep his ex-girlfriend's last name. The lawyer had blinked. Then asked, "Sir, are you out of your mind?" Apparently, that was not the validation Cameron was seeking. By the time Cameron stormed back into the apartment that afternoon, I'd already heard the story twice. He didn't even pretend to be calm. "You've put me in an impossible position," he said, pacing the living room like it was a courtroom and I was the jury. "You put yourself there," I replied. "You canceled the venue payment. You rewrote reality in emails. You sent screenshots to my family. You sent lies to mine. He stopped pacing, hands clenched. I was trying to protect us. No, I said, you were trying to protect you. That's when the entitlement finally surfaced, raw and unfiltered. Do you have any idea what I've invested in this wedding? He snapped. The optics alone. I cut him off. Optics? I repeated. You're worried about optics? Yes, he shouted. People are watching. And there it was. Not love. Not partnership. Audience. I stared at him, and for the first time, I felt nothing at all. That night, Cameron moved out, officially this time. He took his clothes, his books, his carefully curated bookshelf of academic credibility. What he didn't take was his sense of control, because 2 days later, things shifted again. Landon called me. Okay, he said. This just escalated. I closed my eyes. How bad? You know Cameron's last 3 papers? He asked. The ones he keeps bragging about? Yes. They weren't co-authored evenly, Landon said. Not even close. Avery did about 90% of the work. My stomach dropped. And here's the kicker, he added. Her current boyfriend, found out. I straightened. What? Avery's boyfriend, Landon clarified. He's furious. He thinks Cameron's been writing her name and her work, and now the wedding drama made it obvious. I didn't say anything, because suddenly everything made sense. The desperation, the refusal to let go of the name, the panic when I asked him to choose. What's going to happen? I asked. Best case, Landon said. He loses co-authorship. Worst case? Ethics investigation. That evening, Cameron called me. Not angry. Panicked. Avery's boyfriend is threatening me, he said, voice shaking. He says he'll go to the ethics board. I leaned back against the counter. Good, I said. You don't understand, Cameron pleaded. My career could be ruined. The career built on your ex's name, I said. That career? He inhaled sharply. Please, Natalie, you know I work hard. You worked under another woman's identity while planning a life with me, I replied. That's not hard work. That's theft. There was silence on the line. Then small and angry, You're enjoying this. No, I said honestly. I'm done protecting you. He hung up. 3 days before what would have been our wedding, Cameron sent one last email. He CC'd everyone. Both families, all the bridesmaids, every guest. The subject line read, Final compromise. The email said he was now willing to legally change his last name to mine, Morrison, but would continue publishing under Sinclair. He framed it as generosity, as sacrifice. He ended it with a threat. If I refused, he'd be forced to proceed with the wedding alone and explain to guests that I'd abandoned him over something trivial. I read it once, then replied all. Dear Cameron, a marriage where you're Mr. Morrison at home and Mr. Sinclair at work isn't a compromise. It's deception. I won't be anyone's part-time wife. Also, proceeding with the wedding alone is just called a party. Natalie P.S. Attendance still TBD. Within minutes, his friends created a group chat titled, Save This Wedding. Phoebe went first. You're destroying his life. Ramona followed. The deposits are non-refundable. Genevieve added quietly, I'm his sister and even I think you're right, but please just cave. I stared at the screen, then sent 4 Venmo requests, each for $3,750. If you want to save it that badly, I wrote, here's your share. The chat went silent. One by one, they left. I set my phone down and exhaled. Because the thing about truth is, it doesn't need defending forever. Eventually, it stands on its own. And Cameron's was finally doing just that. The night before what was supposed to be my wedding, I slept better than I had in weeks. That alone should tell you everything. I woke up to 73 unread messages. Some were furious. Some were pleading. Some were clearly written by people who'd just learned the truth and didn't know where to place their anger. The one that mattered came in at 3:02 a.m. From Cameron. I'm at the venue. I'm in my suit. If you don't show up tomorrow, I'll never forgive you. I stared at it in the dark, then typed back. I never forgave you for choosing your ex's name over our marriage. I put my phone down and went back to sleep. I did go to the venue the next morning. Not to get married, just to finish something. I wore jeans and a t-shirt, no makeup, hair pulled back. I wanted to look exactly like myself, unpolished, unperforming, unbothered. The country club was fully decorated, white flowers, gold accents, a string quartet tuning up like nothing had gone wrong. Guests milled around in confusion. Some recognized me and froze. Others whispered. Cameron's father spotted me first. He walked over fast, eyes sharp. You came to your senses, he said. No, I replied. I came to return this. I placed the ring in his hand. His face hardened. You're really doing this? Here? He really kept his ex's name, I said calmly. Here. Behind him, I heard raised voices. Cameron's mother rushed over next. Natalie, please, Daphne said. Think about what you're throwing away. A future where my husband publishes under another woman's name? I asked. I have thought about it. Then Cameron appeared. Full suit, perfect hair, eyes wild. You came, he said, relief flooding his face. He stepped toward me, like he was going to hug me. I took one step back. His smile faltered. What's wrong? He asked. I'm not marrying you, I said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. His face twisted. It's just a name. Then change it, I said. I can't. Then I can't marry you. The room went silent. Phones came out. Cameron's sister started whispering something about performance art. Then Cameron leaned in and hissed, desperate and ugly. If you leave right now, I'll tell everyone you're gay. I laughed. Loud. Free. Go ahead, I said. At least then they'd understand why I don't want to marry someone obsessed with his ex-girlfriend. A murmur rippled through the crowd. And then, a voice from the back. Actually, a woman said, standing up, tell them what you asked Avery last week. I turned. So did Cameron. Avery stood there, beside her boyfriend. Cameron went pale. What are you talking about? He stammered. Avery's boyfriend held up his phone. You asked her to leave me, he said, so you could keep using her name without drama. Silence. Avery nodded once. I have the texts. Cameron looked at her, stunned. You what? They didn't wait for his answer. They walked out together. Then Cameron's father followed. Then half the guests. Cameron turned to me, makeup perfect composure finally gone. This is all your fault, he said, voice cracking. No, I said, this is all yours. I left. The aftermath was poetic. Cameron had the reception anyway. 20 people showed up. He gave a speech about choosing himself. Someone posted it on TikTok. The comments were brutal. The university opened an ethics investigation. His tenure application was denied. 2 conferences quietly removed his name. He moved back in with his parents. Last week, he texted me from a new number. I would have changed it eventually. I replied, would have, could have, didn't. He answered, I'm still keeping Sinclair professionally. It's who I am now. I smiled. Cool. Stay single professionally, too. Blocked. Yesterday, Evelyn called me. You dodged a bullet, dear, she said. He's already on a dating app, listing himself as Dr. Cameron Sinclair. The delusion continues. As for me, I'm fine. More than fine. Because I didn't lose a husband. I escaped becoming a footnote in someone else's ambition. And that's a win I'll take every time. There isn't really a next chapter after the truth finishes burning everything fake to the ground. But there is an aftermath. And aftermaths matter. 2 weeks after the wedding, that wasn't. The noise finally quieted. The text slowed. The group chats died. The algorithm moved on to the next spectacle. People stopped forwarding me links and screenshots like I was supposed to keep reliving it for their entertainment. That was the part I hadn't expected. How fast the world forgets. Cameron didn't, though. He tried once more, from a 3rd number this time. I didn't think it would go this far, the message read. I just wanted to protect my future. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back exactly one sentence. If your future requires erasing the person you're marrying, it was never a future meant for me. No reply came after that. And that was when I knew it was actually over. Not dramatically, not explosively. Just done. A month later, I packed up the apartment. I kept the furniture I'd paid for, donated the things that reminded me too much of who I'd been when I thought compromise meant shrinking. I moved into a smaller place across town. Sunlight in the mornings, creaky floors, a coffee shop downstairs where nobody knew my name or my almost wedding. It felt anonymous. It felt clean. I ran into Avery once, by accident, at a bookstore cafe. She hesitated when she saw me. I hesitated too. Then she walked over. I'm sorry, she said simply, for all of it. I nodded. Me too. That was it. No bonding, no shared trauma friendship, just closure. Later, Landon told me Cameron's ethics review was still ongoing, that his department had quietly stopped assigning him graduate students, that the name he fought so hard to keep had started closing more doors than it opened. Funny how that works. As for me, I didn't rush into anything. I went to the gym, I slept, I cooked meals that weren't optimized for anyone else's preferences. I stopped explaining myself. A few months later, I met someone, Daniel, in the most unremarkable way possible. He held the door. We talked about nothing important. When I mentioned my work, he listened without turning it into a hierarchy. On our 3rd date, he asked me a question so simple it almost made me laugh. If we ever got married, he said casually, what would you want to do about last names? I smiled. I'd want it to feel mutual, I said. Whatever that looks like. He nodded. That makes sense. No PowerPoint, no justifications, no ghosts at the table. That's how I knew I'd healed. Because the moment someone values you, you stop having to argue for why you matter. Cameron wanted to be Dr. Cameron Sinclair more than he wanted to be my husband. And that choice cost him everything he thought he was protecting. I didn't lose a wedding. I gained clarity. I gained peace. And I gained the quiet, powerful knowledge that I will never again stand beside someone who needs another person's name to feel important.